Okay, I'm going to try to go fairly quickly through my slides just so we have some time for questions and stuff. So, just a little bit about Owens Corning. We were founded in 1938, actually incorporated in 1938, so this is our 75th anniversary. Young by some standards, by companies in the room here, but and we primarily participate in the building materials market. So you see, if you have insulation in your attic that's pink, it was made by us. There's no other company in the world that can make that. And then in the middle, we also make composite reinforcements, which go into a number of applications. And, you know, one of the hottest applications out there right now are wind blades for wind energy. But also over the years, we've been in the Corvette, we've been in fiberglass ladders, we've been in a number of other things. And then our other big franchise is our roofing business, where we're the #2 roofing shingle maker in North America, which is primarily a North American business. So a little bit about us. So, you know, I'll just build upon a little bit of what Jim and Doug said, you know, from a perspective of Owens Corning and what we've been doing. You know, we call our BYOD program the Next Generation Personal Computing Program. That's kind of our internal name for our BYOD program. More specifically, as we move through pieces and parts of it, we call it a smartphone program, etc. But that's really what we're about. And the program was designed about 3 years ago. We started working on this in pilot phases, etc., to really, with the idea of accelerating business results, giving our employees more choice in how they work and do their jobs in the company, create productivity that generates revenue, that generates efficiency in the operations, and then really generate more platforms for collaboration, ultimately for what we're trying to do. Just a picture, we formally launched our smartphone program in the beginning of 2011. You see on the pie graph there on the side, we had about 1,200 corporate-owned devices, all BlackBerries. That was our standard. Different flavors and varieties depending upon where you were located in the world, but all BlackBerries. And then our pilot group, which quickly grew from 100% opt-in on the pilot group, started with about 50 or so people, and by the end of 2010 we were at 480. So we said, okay, we got something here. The employees want this. We're going to move forward. At the beginning of this year, we're at about just under 1,400 employee-owned devices. And we have a remaining about 607. When you look at the overall breakdown of this, on our employee-owned devices, and now this is a global number, so this is for all of our regions in the world today. You'll see the two numbers added together is bigger than 2011, which means we have a number of employees opting in without any form of compensation for the program, which means they just want to be in it. It also includes tablets, which we have 100% non-stipend on tablets. It's a purely optional piece in our program. And then we'll end up somewhere right around 300 or so still corporate-owned devices in countries where we have legal limitations on what we can do. And I'm sure anybody who's walking down this path knows what a few of those countries are in those regions. But that's about where we are right now. Now, of that 1,400 devices that we have right now, about 80% of them or so are Apple devices right now. That seems to be what our employees are choosing. We're seeing somewhat of an uptick on Android devices, but still Apple rules. I think it's the simplicity of the device that really drives that. We have a few BlackBerry users who kept their BlackBerries. They just love how they type so fast in their BlackBerries, I guess. You know, and we're still supporting that right now. So, you know, our next generation endpoint strategy is really driven around, and that's what we're really focused on. It's driven from moving from a PC world to a different world. A PC world being that we have a standard set of applications, a standard OS, and a standard set of devices. And as we were looking at the consumerization side, we could see this evolving, and we said, well, we have to be kind of ready for this. So moving from those kind of small subset of applications, operating systems, et cetera, to be able to operate within a wider range of both applications and operating systems, and then ultimately devices. And if you look at the various devices over there on the side, I'm sure many of you recognize them. Really, I think on that sheet right now, the only thing we don't have, quote unquote, deployed in our environment is Xboxes. I have those widely deployed in my home, but we are experimenting a little bit with the Xbox, particularly the Connect functionality, and where gesture computing would actually play ultimately in manufacturing for us. But right now, that's not a standard device for us. So. And then really looking further at our endpoints, how do we deliver services across the endpoint ecosphere? We want to be able to do, particularly for customers, particular things, and we're really pushing this year in mobile applications for our customers. But we see that also playing for suppliers, manufacturing, collaboration, media, and network services. A lot of what's been talked about this morning and all through the week here as well. So we're very focused on this and figuring out what we want to do. But the idea is to actually open ourselves up to greater collaboration. I think that's the end result and where we think we'll drive business value. From a security standpoint, I'm glad my chart actually looks very similar to Jim and Doug's chart, right? So at the bottom we have our core, which is really our critical systems and data, 100% lockdown, all that kind of stuff, which really for us incorporates our critical business systems like our ERP systems, SAP, and then our manufacturing shop floor, keeping that shielded. But as Jim and Doug mentioned in their talk, we do have external support on our shop floor for certain applications and certain vended solutions, which we offer secure ways to get in and manage that. We've done a lot of re-architecting on our manufacturing shop floor to isolate, create cells around what we're doing so that the ability to move all the way through end-to-end on our shop floor applications is quite limited in our newest architectures around that. But then we have our business network, and then as we're seeing, we have what we call kind of the OC cloud, which is basically our SaaS applications, which are federated, and we have two-factor authentication on a lot of those types of applications for our own internal security. But then you quickly move on out to associated applications like Fidelity is our 401k supplier, also manages our HSA programs and everything else like that, where we have to exchange information with Fidelity, but we don't manage the access to that. That's up to the employee to do. And then finally, completely unassociated, we do allow Facebook usage in our company, Twitter, etc. But we do selectively block from our internal network certain applications like Dropbox so that we're not losing intellectual property through a very easy pipeline. So that's kind of our point of view on security overall at a very high level. Now, really what we're trying to do is really kind of aligning this. Now I'm going to speak from a more manufacturing standpoint on how we see this developing and what I'm driving my team to work on in a much more proactive way this year so that we can really drive more value on what we're doing. A lot of the technology we talk about on the IT side is actually almost always talked about from a cost position. We want to be lowest cost in IT. So, Owens Cornings, of course, we're top quartile in cost from a manufacturing IT standpoint. On the other side, we're bringing in technology on the manufacturing floor where we can clearly measure the results that we're producing from the use of technology, whether, in the past, things like advanced process control, et cetera. But in between is, I think, a nice intersection there where we're seeing clear opportunities between emerging IT technology or even consumerized technology implicating and improving our shop floor operations. And our trick is really to find that intersection there where the green and red dots kind of align perfectly and we can create big value out of this. Our point of view, or my point of view in general, is that we are very interested in disruptive technology. I'm interested in, will it disrupt me and our operations? And then I'm more interested in actually creating my own disruptions, whether it's discontinuities in the value we create in our manufacturing shop floor, or discontinuities we can create in the marketplace because we can do things that our competitors can't. The worst case scenario is for me to be disrupted by technologies that folks are bringing in or want to use, and we're not ready for it. So that's really where we're focused on creating those disruptions and generating large ROI, either internally for our own operations or for our customers as we look at that. So just an overall space, I had this slide last year. I did a similar presentation last year. I mean, where we've been focused in this year, 2012 to 2013 is really the top boxes. We think they're fairly easy areas for us to work in, fairly clear use cases, business cases, ROIs. And there are good examples for us to be working in order to solidify our overall strategy and where we're going. And the important thing is we're trying to build architectures at the same time we're delivering value. So this is a good way for us to test our theories on our architectures and bring value at the same time. And we'll get to the other ones as we go through time. So how do we actually go about it? We really work in two levels. One is we try to do really quick test and learn. So 4 to 6 week project where we put a piece of technology into a test environment, see if it works, see what it does to ourselves, how we have to think about the architecture around that, and then make a decision, is it worth for us to go forward, or we document the learnings and put everything on the shelf, send the technology back to whatever vendor has provided us that. And we're trying to be very quick at that, looking out far down the pipeline, bringing things in, testing very fast, and getting them in or out, depending upon what we want to do. And then we typically move to a pilot. A pilot has a defined ROI, a defined set of metrics we're trying to accomplish, and we'll get that in place, and we'll leave them in for a measurement period to make sure that we're getting what we think we should be getting. So that's kind of how we're doing our approach to emerging technologies in this space. And then we're really also trying to really leverage that intersection of IT and manufacturing, doing good architecture and service delivery, thinking about all the dimensions at once, because ultimately that's what we're going to have to be concerned about as we go forward. And then establishing our standards around that. And many times a pilot or a test and learn may not be something we decide to move forward with, but it has taught us something in the way we want to set our standards going forward so that we can adjust our standards for the future. Very important for us. And then, you know, our focus areas, which were on the previous slide as well, that we're really working on this year. I think one of the ones that I'm very interested in, maybe a little bit different than kind of reporting and analytics, is around mobile video and video conferencing. Being able to video conference and collaborate on any endpoint, say an iPad, iPhone, whatever, in a secure way, which we can actually get expertise without putting somebody on a plane, having them travel for 22 hours to get to the other side of the world, be tired, be unrested, and meanwhile we have a manufacturing problem that's either causing us downtime, quality, or loss of sale. So very important for us to looking at that. We have some fairly lean business segments where we think we can really benefit from being able to be more quick at hands, feet, and boots on the ground to solve problems. So strategy, just overall, as we've learned, as we've gone through this, our strategy is really is to prioritize opportunities and create an ROI framework around that. Otherwise, everybody's chasing after us for what they want to do and what the applications are. We found inside our company, it's typically a good way to talk to our employees about things. You know, what's the value? What's the use case? What are you doing? You know, how is this going to impact your job or our customers? And that usually generates a fairly robust conversation for us. It also weeds out a lot of stuff that, well, that's just nice to have. I didn't really, you know, oh, you're going to talk to my boss about that? Okay, well, you know, maybe I don't need that so much. And then set standards and governance model around what we're doing, and that's what we're working on right now. You know, and our customization philosophy is we want to try to be internally as shrink-wrapped as possible. And that's mainly from a support standpoint, stability standpoint. But when we're talking about our customers, we're going to do whatever it takes. It's our overall philosophy around that. But behind that is a good, solid architecture that allows us to do that. And then finally, you know, and then on the implementation side, you know, our mobile architecture is critical. You know, we learned very hard this year that Android is a very difficult platform to secure and to build apps on and to be stable on and everything else like that. So we're actually quite happy that most of our employees are using Apple, by the way, because it makes the things a lot easier for us on the back end. But, you know, I think our going on philosophy is it's whatever anybody wants to use. Our customer, we're not going to dictate to our customers that they use Apple devices or Windows 8 or whatever. So, you know, I think we just have to be open to it and be working on that way. We want to focus and continue to focus on security. Our biggest concerns around security is intellectual property. We've learned some lessons as we've been trying to secure intellectual property in a more proactive way. And that is really focusing on that. And it's a very difficult problem in the mobile space. So we're continuing to work on that. The other thing we've learned is that, hey, by the way, our infrastructure isn't all that great with all these people bringing in all their devices. So we're strategizing right now on how to manage traffic, how to manage loads, how to redesign and architect our infrastructure so that we can be much freer on this. You know, a good example for us is YouTube. We allow YouTube access by permission, so it's not just open to everybody. Now, we have about 700 users of YouTube in the company, and mainly that's because we're concerned about bandwidth. You know, and that's just not a position I want to be in going forward, particularly as people bring mobile devices into the space. So, something we definitely are working on this year as well. Finally, cultural. You know, we have a fairly bimodal distribution of people in our organization. We have people with, you know, 30-plus years of experience, quite a few, and then we have younger employees. And what we have to be very careful about is, and I think Jim and Doug talked about this nicely, really building cultural change and change management into the work that we're doing. Because, you know, we have bones in our boneyard of dead technology that nobody's using. And I don't want to keep adding those bones to that boneyard. So we're very focused on that, and we won't do something, which is why we like our pilot approach, our test and learn pilot approach, because then that helps us understand the change management that's involved in order to drive it. So those are our big learnings over the years, you know, and I'm sure we can answer more questions as we go on to roundtable. So hopefully I left some more time for questions. So.